Hi guys, I'm Ms.Mair and welcome to my classroom. Today we're going to be doing a fun experiment incorporating art into science, talking about the three states of matter. What are the three states of matter? Solids, liquids, and gases. So before we get started with our fun experiment, let's talk about those three items. So, what is a solid? A solid has a definite shape and a definite volume. So a great example of a solid would be the chair that I'm sitting in. Its volume isn't going to change and neither is its shape. Now liquids, on the other hand, have a definite volume, but not a definite shape. So for example, the water in this glass, the shape of it will change if I pour it into this bowl, but the volume will not. So as you can see, it's no longer taking the shape of the glass, it's taking the shape of the bowl, but the volume of it has stayed the same. So let's talk about gas. Gas has no definite shape and no definite volume. So the amount of air in this room is changing constantly as its shape is. So for this experiment we're doing today, we're going to talk about the science behind salt dough using our three states of matter. So to do this experiment, we are going to need to go to my kitchen. So follow me. All right guys, so welcome to my kitchen. Now before we get started with making our salt dough, I want to remind you that it is really important for you to get your parents' permission for this experiment because we will be using the oven. So the things that we want to do, the very first thing we're going to do before we even make our salt dough is we want to preheat the oven to 250 degrees. Now preheating is when I am going to turn the oven on to the desired temperature, which is 250 degrees, because I want the oven to be at 250 degrees by the time I put my salt dough into the oven. So besides just the oven, the other materials we're going to need today are measuring cups, a mixing bowl, a mixing spoon, cookie cutters if you want to make them, and a baking pan. Now I'm going to make my salt dough. So what is salt dough? It's a modeling material made out of three items that I can find at home: flour, salt, and water. Now, even though it's made out of flour, salt, and water, it's not something I'm going to want to eat because it is not going to taste good. Trust me. So how does salt dough really incorporate solids, liquid, and gases? Well, that's because the ingredients are solids, liquids, and gases. Flour and salt are my solids. Water is my liquid, and I'm going to be incorporating air into the dough by kneading it, which I'll show you how to do in just a moment. So let's make our salt dough. I have a cup of flour, half a cup of salt, and half a cup of water. I'm going to take these three ingredients and I'm going to put them into my mixing bowl. So I'm first going to add my solids, which is flour and salt. So those are my solids. Now I'm going to add my liquid of half a cup of water. Pour that in. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix this up until all my three ingredients are combined. And I'm going to know that this is ready to go when all that flour you see on the sides has incorporated into the rest of my dough and it starts to come together and it's going to pull aside from the sides of the bowl, and that will let me know that it's ready. So it's almost just about there. So as you can see, it's starting to pull away. That flour that was originally on the sides of the bowl has come off and all my ingredients are nice and combined. Now that our dough is made, the next step in this process is kneading it. And kneading it is going to bring in that third state of matter, which is gas. So how we knead is we are going to use the bottom part of our palm to push the dough and our fingers to pull the dough back to us. So how this is going to look is I'm going to push that dough with the bottom part of my palm, pull it back with my fingers, and I'm going to keep doing this for about 10 minutes. So let me show you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some flour to my countertop and to my hands. And what this is going to do is it's going to help the dough from sticking to my hands and to the countertop. So I'm going to put this dough on my countertop right where the flour is. As you can see, it's kind of sticky and taking a second to get out of that mixing bowl. It doesn't really want to come. So I'm going to mold this dough. And now I'm going to start kneading. So it's a little bit sticky, so I'm going to add a little bit more. And I'm going to add some directly on top. So bottom part, push and pull, and push and pull. While I'm kneading, what this is doing is it is incorporating air into my dough while also further combining my ingredients together. So after I have kneaded this for about 5 to 10 minutes. Then I'm gonna let it rest. And I'm gonna let it rest because the flour in the dough, the gluten in it, needs some time to rest because what we've done is we've stretched it out. So I'm gonna continue kneading this and I'll be right back. So now that I have finished kneading and I have let it rest and of course washed my hands, now I'm ready for the fun stuff. I'm ready to mold my dough and make cookie cutters out of it, maybe some ornaments, and maybe I may just put my dog's paw print in it. Who knows? So what exactly is dough when it comes to the 3 states of matter? Well, I have an answer for you. It's what we call a suspended solid, and that's because of the liquid that's still in it. So as you can see right now, this dough kind of looks solid, but it's not really retaining its shape. And that's because the solid particles are suspended due to the liquid. So again, I'm gonna take some flour and I'm gonna put that on my countertop and on my hands because the dough is probably still gonna be sticky. So I'm gonna flop that off my plastic wrap, which I used while letting it rest. Now, something else that might come in handy for you if you don't wanna do this directly on the countertop is to use wax paper or parchment paper because then it's just a quick and easy cleanup for you. Not much mess at all. But I don't mind the mess and I don't mind cleaning it up, so I'm just gonna stick with the good old countertop here. So I'm going to roll out some shapes here. Now you can make something cool like a 3D object with it, like a cube or a horse, whatever you have in mind. But for the sake of this video, I'm just gonna do some simple cutouts with some cookie cutters. And how I'm gonna do that is I'm gonna roll out the dough with my rolling pin. Now, if you don't have a rolling pin, that's fine. You don't have to use a rolling pin. You can use other things that you have on hand. There are plenty of times I've simply used a cup that was round in shape to help me out. So whatever you may need. So I'm gonna roll this out a little bit. Now I am going to add some flour to my rolling pin because again, I want to keep the dough from sticking on my rolling pin just like I wanted to keep my hands from sticking to the dough and the countertop. So now I'm just gonna roll this out until I get a thickness that I like. So one thing to keep in mind when making things with salt dough is that if you're gonna make something like a cookie cutter, keep in mind how thick your dough is because the thicker it is, the longer it might take to cook. Whereas the thinner it is, it may take it a little bit of a shorter amount of time. Now, if you're making something 3D on the other hand, that might take a little bit longer due to the thickness there. So just keep those things in mind. Now, I'm gonna take my cookie cutter and I'm gonna make a cookie cutter out of this. So I'm gonna add some flour to this, just like I did my rolling pin and my hands and the countertop. And I am going to cut my salt dough just like that. I'm gonna pull the salt dough away from where I cut and I'm gonna transfer this onto my cookie sheet. Now on my cookie sheet, you'll see that I did already cut some out. I freeformed some I used cookie cutters on, and now that I have some shapes cut out of my salt dough, I'm ready to put these in the oven. The oven was preheated to 250 degrees. It's nice and hot at 250 degrees. So I'm gonna put those in the oven and they're gonna bake off for about 2 hours. Now what's happening in the oven during that 2 hours is that our suspended solid is now going to turn into a complete solid. That happens by evaporation, and evaporation is the liquid changing from a liquid to a gas. So the liquid that's still in our dough is going to evaporate, turning into a gas, creating the complete solid. Once we pull these out of the oven, they're gonna be solid because all of the liquid has evaporated. Once your salt dough is ready to come out of the oven, take an oven mitt and carefully pull the pan out of the oven and place the pan in a spot that's safe for it because it's going to be hot. So for example, put it on a towel or a hot pad or even the top of your stove. Let the pan as well as your salt dough cool completely before you take your salt dough pieces off of the pan and transfer them onto a plate like you see here. Here I have already transferred these pieces onto a plate because they are nice and cool to the touch, and as you can see, they are solid. So now I can use my imagination and creativity and I can decorate these however I want. Now that we've learned about the 3 states of matter and how they're incorporated into salt dough, I hope you take this experiment and do it at home with your families. Thanks so much for watching.